Welcome to the International Conference of Sustainable Engineering and Digital Innovation Conference podcast series. Today in this podcast, we will go through a climate and the most important part in today's conversation worldwide, the climate change, the climate impact. Today in our podcast, we have a Professor Axel Mikhailova, Climate Policy Specialist in University of Zurich, Switzerland, and also he is a Senior Founding Partner and Perspective in Climate Group and Research Director. Welcome, Professor, to our podcast.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for joining our conference, which is mainly about sustainable engineering and digital innovation in Oman.
I'm very impressed by the conference, particularly the participation of young female researchers and also the South-South collaboration that one sees between Omani universities and universities of the region.
Thank you so much. Before we dive into the topic, let's take our audience a little bit into your career pathway and milestones.
So I've been working on climate policy over the last 3 decades. Actually, I got into the topic because my father was a nuclear physicist, and already in the 1970s he said, climate change will be the problem of your generation, so you should be in looking at it. And I think he was quite happy when seeing that I got onto this path.
Exactly. Thank you so much. So let's start our conversation speaking about carbon market. What is it, and why today carbon markets is one of the trending topics in the research?
Yeah, the good thing about greenhouse gas emissions is that it doesn't matter where you reduce them. So anywhere on the world you can reduce 1 ton of CO2 and you have an impact globally. That means you can look for the cheapest options of abating greenhouse gases, and the market, of course, is the best opportunity to harness these cheap options.
That's perfect. And do you think in how these carbon markets is actually functioning?
There are 2 main forms of the carbon market. One is called cap and trade. So a government defines the maximum level of greenhouse gas emissions that the private sector can actually emit. And then those companies who are able to reach that level, they are fine. Companies who can't reach the level need to buy certificates from other companies that exceed the targets. So that means those companies that face high costs of reducing emissions can buy the certificates, and those companies who are able to reduce at lower costs can make a benefit.
Oh, that's interesting. During your speech today in our conference, you said Oman is leading into this sector in terms of GCC country. So what is actually the advantage that Oman have?
Well, Oman has actually been able to harness those markets under the Kyoto Protocol, the so-called Clean Development Mechanism, but also the voluntary carbon market. So it shows that Omani entities are actually clever in exploiting the opportunities, and that also the government has not put any barriers for this participation. So it's a good opportunity to also now use the new form of the carbon market under the Paris Agreement, the so-called Article 6 market.
That's interesting. You mentioned now there are kind of barriers, maybe worldwide barriers. Can we go a little bit into, if any country would like to go to the carbon markets and the climate part, what are the barriers that they may face?
Well, the first barrier, of course, is to have a generic understanding what are the mitigation opportunities in your country. So what is the cost of reducing 1 ton of CO2 equivalent? And also, of course, you need to have a good technical understanding, but also the government needs to enable the work on actual reduction projects, but also then the acceptance, the approval to export the emission credits coming from these emission reduction projects.
So did any roles of regulators, they can play roles to simplify these barriers?
Yeah, well, for example, Omani government now has set up a framework. Unfortunately, it has not yet been published, but I have heard about it. So I would think that once this framework is publicly available, it would give the opportunity for Omani entities, private sector, research institutions to then really get into these market opportunities.
Nice to hear that. Moving towards your keynote speaker today, you spoke about one of the international standards, the ISO 37000. How this international standards is linked into the operation and projects into that?
Well, one needs to be clear, the standard currently is being set by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. That's done through the so-called Paris Agreement crediting mechanism. There is a supervisory body that sets up the rules. So ISO only plays a minor role in the context of these markets.
Yes. So it's not kind of a standard that if anybody follows mean that they are on the stage. They're just helping them into the process.
Yeah, well, I would say ISO can be helping companies to understand what they need to do, but the real thing they need to undertake is to be in line with the regulations of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change.
To simplify the things to the people, they are not in the domain, but they are interesting to living in this worldwide. How we can simplify this topic to them?
Critical thing is to understand where do we go under what is called business as usual. What would be the emissions, for example, in the oil and gas sector, in the electricity sector. Then what are opportunities to reduce emissions compared to this business as usual? That essentially gives us the idea how many emission credits we can get. And then we need to have an idea what is the revenue we could get from the sale of these emission credits. So I have an understanding of the pricing. The pricing for the Article 6 credits just is emerging, but one can clearly say between 15 and 30 US dollar per ton of CO2 equivalent should be a revenue that can be achieved in the next 5 to 10 years. And then, of course, you can make a very simple calculation. Are you able to make a profit if you sell these credits at that price?
That's true, that's true. My next question, how these kind of international conferences play a role into the awareness and achieve the goals into the carbon?
Well, cooperation between various stakeholders, academicians, government officials, NGOs, journalists, that can only be triggered through conferences, through interaction. So I think ICSEDI is a very good forum that can serve to generate the links that then can be built upon.
Your last question from my side is if you would like to advise students, researchers, academia, or the people in the industry to take this forward, what will be the advice?
My advice would be to get a good understanding of what are the key principles to get a high integrity carbon market. So understanding the principle of additionality, meaning that you shouldn't get credits from what would happen under business as usual, and also that you don't overestimate the baseline, so that you don't blow up artificially the volume of credits that an activity generates.
Thank you so much. Now, one question's come to my mind while you're speaking. Did AI is working or it's having any role into the carbon market?
AI can have an important role in getting an understanding of structure of data. We had under the Clean Development Mechanism more than 10,000 projects generating 2 billion credits.
Oh.
And so analyzing this huge volume of data, AI plays an important role.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for joining us in this podcast. Very important information we get, and hopefully also the audience from this podcast, they get this information. By the end of this podcast, we keep saying this podcast isn't predicting the futures, but we are preparing for it. Thank you so much.